So we now have a very special guest to help to finish up the conference, and somebody that for all of the people that have come from Australia and New Zealand, you probably don't know yet who this person is. However, everybody here in Asia would know who he is, and for a lot of VAs here, I know this is very exciting because they're going to meet someone that they've only ever seen on television before. And his name is Jonathan Yabut, and Jonathan is the winner of the first season of The Apprentice Asia. So we all know the show The Apprentice with Donald Trump in America and Mark Bouris in Australia. But he actually, at the tender age of 26, decided that he was going to leave his marketing career and audition for The Apprentice, and went through a grueling experience, which was with Tony Fernandez, who's one of the richest people in Asia. He's a billionaire. He owns Air Asia. He owns a Formula One team, and also an airline Formula One team and an English Premier League team as well. And he then was successful in actually winning that first season of The Apprentice. He worked with Air Asia for 2.5 years and has now started his own marketing agency and regularly speaks all throughout Asia. It's also the author of his own book as well, which is called From Grit to Great, which is going to be the theme of this presentation. So he's going to come up here and give us a whole bunch of great ideas in terms of business, but also inspiration, success, and how we can all achieve more by giving more. So let's all put our hands together and welcome up Jonathan Yabut.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me here. Thank you for flying me all the way from Kuala Lumpur and making me see my mom, at least for a few nights. I'd like to align energies first before we start, because this morning I'm going to be talking about the values of success and inspiration. And I'm sure something that's very relevant to your businesses. So I want you guys to please raise your right hand. All right, thank you. I want you guys to tap the person to your right. And I'm going to give you the chance to tap whatever part of that body's person you want to tap. That's a very big issue, right? All right. And while you're tapping that person's body, I'm going to teach you two very helpful words while you're in the Philippines, and specifically in Cebu, because Cebu has a different language compared to someone like me who's a Manileño who's from Manila. In this city, when you're handsome, they call you guapo. All right? And if you are beautiful, they call you guapa. All right? So I want you to tap the person to your right. If it's a male, guapo. If it's a female, guapa. And tell the person, you are so guapo. All right. That's nice. I like the way there's so much conviction. When I was starting out in the corporate world, my first ever boss taught me, John, sometimes it's okay to lie. All right? It's a good thing. I want you guys to do the same to your left hand. Raise your left hand. And then tap the person to your left. I want you guys to do the same thing. And then tell the person, but you are more guapo. All right. Beautiful. So I hope there's a lot of conviction, and I hope the person to your right didn't get mad. But that's lesson number 2 I also learned in the corporate world when I was starting out. Sometimes it's okay to lie twice. All right. So thank you. I guess all energies are aligned now. I'm going to be talking about my journey of being part of the Apprentice Asia and what I've learned being the apprentice of Mr. Tony Fernandez himself. And I want you guys to be able to at least relate to some humble beginnings that I had growing up in the Philippines. So this is my talk. It's called From Grit to Great. It's also the title of my book. It's the lessons that I had in the Apprentice Asia. These are my social media accounts. Majority of my advocacies and my passion in the Philippines is to share career tips, especially for Generation Y and millennials like myself. So if you have any photos later on, please do tag me in your social media accounts. I'll be very happy to have them. I'm going to be sharing a quick video about the Apprentice Asia for those who may not be familiar about it. So for those who are uninitiated about this TV show, this was created in 2004 by one of the very creative guys in the movie industry, Mr. Mark Burnett. He's also the same guy responsible for The Voice and Survivor. In 2004, he created The Apprentice, deciding to pit 16 business executives, not in the jungle, but this time in the urban jungle in the city, And the first ever winner was Mr. Bill Rancic, if you may be familiar. I think 2010 was when Mr. Mark Boris himself was the TV host for The Apprentice Australia. And so way back in 2013, after 28 countries have created their own franchise for The Apprentice, they decided to create their own version of The Apprentice Asia. There were 30,000 applicants who joined this TV show. So obviously 30,000 trimmed down to 1,000, 1,000 to 30, and finally, they had to get the 12 most good-looking contestants. Thank you so much. Who had to be in this TV show. And the great thing is yours truly was able to survive and get a one-year stint to become the apprentice of Mr. Tony Fernandez. So I'm going to show a 2-minute quick clip just for you to appreciate what happened in this TV show.
It's the job interview of their lives. From across the region, Asia's best business brains are heading to Kuala Lumpur.
I'm not here to compete with anybody else. You only compete with yourself.
Selected from thousands of applicants, 12 candidates will battle it out for a dream job with a 6-figure salary.
This is not just a job interview for me. This is the job. I deserve it, and I want it.
But to succeed, they will first have to impress the boss, Mr. Tony Fernandez.
I will bring out things you never believed you had in you. And I'm good at that.
A self-made man, Tony Fernandez is one of Asia's greatest success stories. A groundbreaking entrepreneur, Tony has built a diverse portfolio of businesses, putting his hand to everything from hospitality to sports franchises. Mr. Fernandez is most famous today for revolutionizing the aviation industry. As chairman of AirAsia, he's established the company as the fastest growing, most profitable airline in the world. Known for his drive, passion, and commitment to equality.
You can achieve anything that you want to do.
To be his apprentice, they must simply outshine the competition.
Accompany Mr. Lee straight to his room now.
Next.
Shut up, man. Shut up.
And survive his grueling 11-week interview process.
There's no excuse. Don't make excuses. You happy with losing? You have your chance to be fired if that's what you want.
What have you brought to the table in terms of
Oops, we're checking for updates. Good thing it wasn't porn.
creativity?
But this isn't my laptop, just so you know.
It's just an attitude problem.
Let me explain.
Well, I've heard enough. Sounds a bloody disaster.
12 candidates.
I make sure that you are on the money. I got your back on this.
Yes.
You drive it down disaster road.
Why can't you guys stick to the time?
Now do dance on top of him.
One job.
Oh, girls, what's this? Calm down, everyone.
You come back like you want to really be my apprentice, or don't bother coming back.
Thank you.
Who will take the title?
It's a monumental screw-up. For that reason, you're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
All right, that's season 1. For any Asians in the room, if you're interested, by the way, season 2 is coming up this April. The applications are open. If you're 19 years old, knows how to speak in English, and has an Asian passport, just log on to axn.com and you can apply. And who knows, you might be the next season 2 winner if your boss allows you to take a leave for 3 months to shoot it, which I doubt. Then you have all the rights to join The Apprentice. If that piqued also your interest, there are many creative and illegal ways of watching the rest of the episodes online. Because AXN is blocking all the rights. So before I start sharing some quick 4 lessons in the next 30 minutes, I'd like to talk quickly about my humble beginnings. And these are the 12 contestants of the TV show. Some came from Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, India, China, Japan. There's also one expat guy they had to put a white guy, obviously, in this TV show. And he came from China, been an expat there, and also from France. I really come from humble beginnings. My parents come from a small town called Kalibo in Aklan. You may know it as where the world-famous Boracay is situated. Some of you may be heading there. I hope you guys are. And my mom is your typical Asian tiger mom who wants the best for her kids. So one day, she and my dad migrated to Manila, the capital, and sent me to an all-boys Catholic private school, which is what you usually do in this country if you want to send your children to the best education. Unfortunately, my parents couldn't afford for that. My classmates would end up to become the sons of politicians and ambassadors in the Philippines. And the only way for me to enter that school is to be under scholarship. I clearly remember my mom told me, you have to be the first honors in class because if you're only second honors, you only get 75% scholarship. If you get third honors, you only get 50% scholarship. So if you don't get first honors or valedictorian, you're going to get kicked out from this school. So it was really years and years. I was a scholar from preparatory down to university, of being financially and academically pressured throughout my life. And I remember my junior, senior prom. You guys have that as well, right? Before you graduate for university, you do your last dance together with your classmates. And I clearly remember that was 1997. It was in Manila Hotel, the grandest hotel in the city that time. And by that time, there wasn't yet any Uber or Grab car. And my dad, being my dad, brought me to the lobby of that hotel using a motorcycle. I was so ashamed. And I told my dad, Dad, if you fetch me tonight after the dance, please fetch me at the back door entrance of the hotel. This was the most embarrassing moments of my life. And at 2 a.m., my classmates would ask me, John, do you need a lift back home? And I said, no, it's okay. My driver's also coming in. Only to sneak out at the back door entrance of the hotel and wait for my dad and his motorcycle. This was the moment of my life when I told myself that I want to get out of this mediocrity. I want to be that guy from Manila who can prove to the rest of the world that you can never be too small to dream big. And if you want something so bad in your life, you're going to get it because you think you deserve it. So that's the first thing about myself. Another thing I'd like to share about myself is this. When I was 17 years old and I was a freshman at the University of the Philippines, and you know how it feels to become a freshman in university, clean slate, no one knows you in school. You think you're the next ambitious guy who's going to be the next Steve Jobs. I was feeling the same thing on my first day. I was taking a bath. I was rubbing soap on my right breast when I realized that there was a lump growing. And so I told my mom, who's a nurse, Ma, I think we need to see a doctor. But she dismissed it. Weeks passed, months passed, and the lump was still there. I thought it was a pimple. And unfortunately, when we saw a doctor, after 6 seconds, I can clearly remember what the doctor said. And he said, Jonathan has a cyst, and we have to take it out to find out if it's benign or malignant. Unfortunately, there's a 0.0085% chance for males to get cysts on their breast. But the moment that they have it, it's an 85% chance of becoming terminally ill and be diagnosed with breast cancer. Again, this was the second aha moment of my life. And when I found out about it, I called up my friends and told them, when I get buried, please play the song Semi-Charmed Kind of Life by Third Eye Blind, because it's my favorite song of all time. And please make me wear the most beautiful suit in the world. Obviously, this story didn't happen. And I'm here gladly sharing it with you because that cyst was benign. But being that second aha moment of my life, I realized that if you really want something in your life, if you want to become the next billionaire, if you want to become the next CEO, if you want to become the next Steve Jobs or Prime Minister of your country, you cannot afford to wait for next week, next month, or next year, because you'll never know if the clock will stop ticking for you. Today, you may be laughing your hearts out, enjoying this beautiful resort, enjoying your family, but tomorrow, you'll never know if you're dead and if the clock will suddenly stop ticking for you. So I'm not here to wish that all of you would have cysts on your right breast. It's really painful, I have to say. My mom still keeps that in a vial, and when I was growing up, he would point it to me, and if I did something like go home at 4 a.m., he would tell me, you want this to happen again in your life? I'm here to wish, rather, that all of you would realize that the only enemy of the ambitious is time. In today's world, and I'm sure you guys are in that department, when technology is out there to help you out, a simple post on Facebook, on YouTube, or Twitter can propel you towards success. I'd like to believe that if you don't succeed in the next 5 or 10 years, it is a matter of the consequences of choices you make in your life today. And so I want you guys, as an assignment, to look at yourself in the mirror tonight and ask yourself, am I on track of what I want to become in the next 5 or 10 years? Am I slacking off, or am I waiting for the next thing to happen when, in fact, it's not going to happen at all? So those are the two things. Those are the telenovelas of my life. Good thing no one cried. The first lesson I'd like to share is this, and this was stated by a Roman philosopher named Seneca. Does anyone here know Seneca? All right, good. I also don't know him. I placed his name because it makes me look credible. But he really said this quote, and he said, success is when preparation meets opportunity. In life, I'd like to think that there are two things, the predictable and the unpredictable. The predictable things are those in which, in school, for example, if we know we have a biology exam happening next week, we know we're going to prepare for it. In business, if we're going to be meeting a client in the next 2 or 3 days, we need to know the profile of that client. It's as simple as that. Science tells us, guys, that humanity always loves predictability. We end up panicking when things are ambiguous, and we don't like risking things. Unfortunately, unpredictable things also happen in life. For example, you don't know if the person who will make you smile for the rest of your life is in this room. We don't know that, right? We don't know if you get out of this hotel and you get struck by lightning. We also don't know that, right? But the beauty of what Seneca is saying is if the predictable meets the unpredictable. And the good thing is that unpredictable things can also be positive, such as opportunities that only knock once in your life. And if you happen to be preparing for that opportunity, even if you don't know that opportunity is going to happen, it can mean success. For some people, it can also mean luck. I'm going to show some anecdotes about this. So I've shown you about The Apprentice a while ago. When I was 17 years old, I was a big fan of this show. You name it, I've seen all 154 episodes of whatever Apprentice is it. Apprentice Czech Republic, Apprentice Italy, Apprentice Spain. I downloaded all subtitles because I was a big fan of this. When it was my turn, and I was so happy when there was an Apprentice Asia happening in my continent, I knew exactly what was going to happen because I've known all the scripts and I've known all the positioning of the contestants and the hosts themselves. But that wasn't deliberate preparation on my end. I think I won, not simply because I was the smartest guy, but because I prepared well for this man. This is my boss, Mr. Tony Fernandez. He was the 2015 Time Magazine Person of the Year for being responsible for one of our flights that was downed, QZ8501. And my admission to the rest of the producers of the show was that I didn't know. I didn't have any idea who this man was until I joined this TV show. The Indonesians, Malaysians, and Singaporeans had a big advantage joining this TV show because they know who Mr. Tony Fernandez is. So what do you do if you're applying for a job, wants to know the CEO, but you have no idea? You stalk, right? You Google the person. And so I went to YouTube as well and watched 34 video interviews by that time, just to understand who I was applying for. And in every video interview, it was a great thing to understand and notice that he mentions the word passion and accountability 5 to 6 times in each interview. He mentions the words leadership and youth 2 to 3 times in every interview. I even had an Excel sheet just to, tally all these things. And I realized that these were the qualities that he was looking for in a candidate. When it was my turn to be in that TV show, I only needed to surface them out of sincerity, and prove to him that I was the candidate he needed to hire. This is the power of preparation. Benjamin Franklin says it best. When you fail to prepare, you only prepare to fail. And I'm sharing this because in today's world, when technology makes a lot of things so easy, we end up wanting to wing everything in our lives, thinking that if we successfully wing one meeting or one project, we can do it all over again. I don't believe in this. I'd like to believe that if you only succeed without preparation, you were simply lucky. So I'm going to show another anecdote about this. Who here loves cooking? All right. Obviously, if I say who here loves eating, everyone's going to be raising their hands, right? 2 years ago, I had the luxury of being able to enroll into a culinary school. And I clearly remembered the first thing that our chef instructor taught to us. And that is the concept of mise en place. Mise en place is a French term which means to set in place. It means that every professional cook or chef must not start cooking until all ingredients are in front of him. The onions must be chopped, the beef must be marinated, the soy sauce, vinegar, salt, and pepper must all be in arm's length. What do you think is the reason why? Any shout-outs? All right. One is visualization, because you need a hierarchy of what to place first and what to place last. What else? All right. What else? Timing, that's right. That's right. That's right. And also, I would like to add, you end up panicking if you haven't even chopped a single onion or any garlic in that ingredient. In Asian cooking, no matter how brilliantly you cooked a dish, but the moment you burn that one ingredient, which is garlic, everything gets ruined. Life and work is also like this. My pet peeve are corporate folks who go to the office at 7 in the morning, and the first thing that they do is to instantly open their email inbox, wishing that they would have a zero inbox by 10 or 11 in the morning. And then I ask them, but did you make money for business that day? And the answer usually is no. And that's because there's a big difference between being busy and being productive. I don't care if you've answered 10,000 emails that morning. If that time should have been allotted for something else that makes money for business, then you lose the game of life. I'm going to share another anecdote here. What am I cooking here, guys? Pasta with some pesto? Do you think I need the mise en place for this? Yes? Okay, I'll be snobbish to say that I cook well, so therefore this is easy to wing it. I think while the oil is getting hot, I can just get everything from the pantry and toss everything to the pan. But metaphorically, that's because this is the life of a kindergarten or a young adult. It's very easy. You don't need much preparation. But for most of us in this room, most adults in this room, our life is as complex as like this dish. And this is paella, a Filipino dish with over 24 ingredients. Imagine your oil is already so hot, and yet you even haven't chopped a single ingredient. What's going to happen to the dish? You may still cook it. That's fine. But most cooks, especially the unprofessional do, they end up tossing all the ingredients just for the sake of tossing them in. Fine, you cooked the dish, but did you cook it brilliantly? And the answer usually is no. Successful people are those who create a mise en place. They visualize what needs to get done for the day before they even execute. And so I have a thing against people who are too trigger happy that they end up executing so many things. And after 4 or 5 hours of working, was it really the first thing you're supposed to do that morning? The answer usually is no. And so create a mise en place as the first lesson. The second thing I'd like to share, and this is my favorite. As entrepreneurs, I don't think you don't need to say yes to every opportunity of success. I'd like to believe that successful people are those who also know when, how, and why should they say no. So give me a raise of hands. Who here has a to-do list every day? All right? The rest are just boring people or inefficient people. I'm just kidding. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have a to-do list. That's the life of a very busy person. And doesn't it feel like you're a Superman or a Wonder Woman if you're able to cross out this list, right? And if you're not able to cross out any of them, you feel like you're less of a person. But that feeling is fine because science tells us that you can only cross out 2 to 3 things, multitasking them on a daily life. Spreading yourself too thinly and weakly in so many other things will not lead you to any success. If I may ask you guys to imagine this, who here watches Grey's Anatomy? I'm not sure if it's popular in Australia. All right, so Grey's Anatomy is a TV show about a group of doctors and the drama that they have in their life. Let's set aside that TV show. I want you guys to imagine this scene. Let's imagine you're one of the doctors. There are 5 doctors who are on duty in the hospital today. You cannot call anyone else. And in front of you, the lobby of the hospital, is a bus of 40 passengers crashing. All right? You don't need to close your eyes. I want you guys to imagine that in those bus of 40 passengers, some people are dying, some people have lost a limb, an eye, some may be surviving. If you're one of the doctors, what's the first thing you're supposed to do? All right, of course, you segregate, you prioritize the people who need the utmost help. And there's again another, thank you to the French, there's again another French term for this, which they use in times of calamities, earthquakes, accidents, or even medical mishaps. And that is what we call as triage. Triage, again, is a French term which means to filter. It means that if there are many two people demanding for medical attention, but there are few people who can supply it, those doctors, paramedics, or nurses can only focus their attention to the people who need it the most. Unfortunately, in triage, if someone is going to die anyway, and we have too few resources to attend to them, we will painfully and regretfully abandon them as well. This is also life. When we wake up in the morning, we get so much stimuli, thinking we have to accomplish so many things. You get a WhatsApp message from your friend asking for something. You get a message from your boss through an email. You get a phone call from your husband or your kids asking for something. We feel compelled to accomplish so many things. But we never ask ourselves, is everything really wildly important? That everything must be accomplished that day? Or could I move things to another day or delegate them to someone else? If you look at the successful people, guys, you guys know for surely who these are. You have Richard Branson. You have the richest Asian in the world. That's Jack Ma, who owns Alibaba. You have Steve Jobs. You have Warren. When I was young, I called him Warren Buffet. Apparently, it's Warren Buffett. And there's also Bill Gates, and there's also Oprah. If you look at their biographies and their books, if you ask them one thing that's common among all of them, Warren Buffett says it best, and he says, for every 100 opportunities presented to me, I decline to 99 of them and focus only on one big thing and make a good name out of it. One thing and becoming too ambitious to do so many things, especially if I'm not good at them, will only spread myself too thinly. You look at Steve Jobs, you look at an Apple store today, and how many things can you buy in an Apple store? Lots, right? But in terms of, let's say, inventory of items, you can only buy an iPod, an iPad, an iPhone, a Mac. If you look at the major inventories, it's less than 10. But if you look at the patent office in the US today, how many patents does Apple have that could have been converted to any product or service? Hundreds? Higher? Thousands. Samsung has 44,000 patents. Apple has around 12,543 patents that could have been converted to any product or service. But Steve Jobs and Tim Cook said, no, we're not going to be tempted to do everything. We're only going to be focusing on one big thing, work hard for it in 20 years, and make a good name out of it. And really, if you look at Apple as a company, they're only selling one thing. What is that? That's common in all the gadgets. Software? Specifically? It's the iOS. They're not selling an iPhone. It's basically another phone with an iOS inside. They're not selling an iPad. It's basically a tablet with an iOS inside. In the future, when they sell an iCar, that's another car with an iOS inside. If I put an iOS into a table or chair, it can become an iTable or iChair as well. This is the power of focus. The reason why Apple has been good at what they're doing for the past 20 years is because they've mastered and perfected one key element in their business, and that's iOS. I'm going to give another example closer to home, and this is where Steve Jobs says, when he was asked the question, Steve, what is one thing you're very proud of in Apple that you think made you successful for the past few years? And he says, I am as proud of what we don't do as I am with what we do. Deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do. In other words, it's not a question of the volume of the things that you do every day. What matters is the quality of the output. When I was with Tony Fernandez 2 years ago, I started out, one of my favorite stories is this, and this was from Delta Airlines of the United States. In 1993, one of the cabin crew members suggested to management, boss, do you notice this lettuce that we've been serving to the entrees of the passengers? I noticed that none of the passengers are eating them, and whenever they get thrown into the garbage, everything gets, smell bad. So may I suggest to take it out because it's not really that important. Management obviously was surprised. Initially, they resisted it, but they took the advice, and in the first 3 months of taking out the lettuce, either the passengers did not notice that the lettuce was gone, or in fact, they thought that the plate looked cleaner. And so management said, wow, this is working. Let's continue it for another year. And in 1 year, just by taking out the lettuce in all the entrees, they saved $1.4 million US. Imagine the small impact of taking out those lettuce and how it led to such a big savings for a company like Delta Airlines. And just like Delta Airlines, a lot of us in this room are like this. We harbor so many things we think are important. But really, if we know how to let them go, it can lead to something else. And so that's my assignment for all of you guys tonight. Do you have some lettuce? in your life that you thought should always be there, but really you need to know how to let it go. Remember, for every no that you say, it gains you a yes to something else. And that yes must be something that can truly lead you and set you up for success. As the song goes, let it go. All right? Lesson number 3. It's talking about leadership these days, and I'm sure a lot of you guys manage a lot of people. When I talk about leadership, it's not just about people reporting to you. Leadership is also influence. Being able to make someone perform a task, even if the person doesn't like you, or even if the person doesn't want to work for you or do the job. That's leadership. And I learned that in Apprentice Asia, leadership, in order to stand out, you also need to learn how to stand back. Leadership is pullership, not pushership. I'm going to give another anecdote about this. Here's a picture of a leader in a spotlight. And what I hate about in a lot of cultures, especially in Asia, conservative Asia, is that we have this automatic assumption that the moment you are in the organizational chart as the president of the company, you assume that people follow you. But what we learn through science is that the people who get respect and who get followed by those direct reports are those who put the interests of their people at heart. And I learned this in the Apprentice Asia. This is Andrea, the first runner-up from Singapore. That's Alex. He's the second runner-up representing China. He's been an expat there for 10 years, but he's originally from France. And I clearly remember again, in the last few episodes, when it was just me and Andrea in the final 2, Alex one day dragged me to the kitchen. And he said, you know what, John, I don't think you deserve to be in the final 2 because you did not volunteer many times as a project leader. If you're familiar with the format of The Apprentice, you always have to raise your hand and volunteer as a project manager so you get noticed by the CEO. But if your team loses, you get automatically nominated in the bottom 3. So he was accusing me that I didn't raise my hand many times because I was scared of being nominated in the bottom 3. But I told him, you know what, Alex, this is the problem with a lot of us in terms of defining leadership. The reason why I did not volunteer many times as the project manager in those moments, because when I thought in those tasks that someone else was willing to do the job or is passionate to do the job, you take a step back and you let that other person shine. Because the real role of a leader is to make more leaders out of themselves. Once you become a leader, it's no longer about you, but the people that you serve. It's not about getting the stage all by yourself, but carrying that stage with the people on it at the end of the day. I'm going to share another example. I work for these companies. Globe Telecom is the largest postpaid communications provider in the Philippines, and GSK is the second pharma company in the world next to Pfizer. And when I was 25 years old, I was that competitive, ultra-competitive guy who was always promoted every year. On my 26th year, on my second year in GSK, it was my first ever time in my career that I didn't get promoted. And when I saw that email announcing the promotions, I dashed to the cubicle of my boss and asked her, you asked me number 1, 2, and 3. And I did them brilliantly. Why isn't my name in the promotions list? And that's when she says, calm down, Jonathan. Remember that time when I asked you to do a brilliant presentation to the CEO, and you had 2 brand managers reporting to you who helped you make those slides. That night, I asked you out for a dinner to celebrate the victory, and I asked you to tag along anyone. But you came alone. And you even asked me, should have I tagged along anyone else? And that's when I realized that you're not worthy of getting that bigger desk because you're insecure to share the limelight and you're insecure to share the stage. That you think it's all about you instead of recognizing and praising the people who also helped you out. Leadership is pullership, not pushership. In school, and this is what I hate, we always get taught that as long as you keep on raising your hands and as long as you have group work, even if you're the ones dominating the entire group and no one does their job, everyone gets the same grade. And this is where it's wrong because we think that the corporate world becomes a race. I have a lot of folks in AirAsia who always ask me, John, I always send the fastest emails, I make the best reports, I make the most amount of money for this company. Why am I not promoted yet? And I always tell them because there's a big difference between being a brilliant executioner individually versus being a manager. Manager means you have to manage a group of people with a different set of skills. We saw this again, and I'm going to give another example. I'm not sure if you guys love football. The Philippines is a very basketball nation, but when I worked in Malaysia and Singapore, I've noticed everyone's crazy about this sport. And in 2014, I saw that there was a big lesson to learn with how Brazil lost to Germany. You may have recalled that Brazil was the host country of the 2014 World Cup. And when they were against Germany in the semifinal round, their two star players, Neymar and Thiago Silva, were taken out. Neymar broke his vertebra. Thiago Silva was yellow carded. And when they had to face Germany, they lost a heart-wrenching score of 7-1. And that's because the psychological confidence of Team Brazil went down. Why? Because they depended too much on their star players. Leaderships that I hate are what we call as one-man teams. Teams that are only dominated by one person. And the moment that person leaves, everything crumbles. I'd like to think that this is the reason why Apple today is suffering so much in terms of innovation, because while Steve Jobs was very effective in executing things, he wasn't good in selecting a great successor as well. This is where leadership is all about succession planning as well. Compare that to Germany, where the only reason why they won against Argentina with a score of 1-0 was because of this guy. And that's Götze, who's a substitute player, only had 6 years of experience playing football, but he was the one who made the score that led them to the victory. Why? Because Team Germany felt, and all of its players, that even if you're not the star player, even if you're not the team captain, you can make a difference. You can make a score. That everyone else in the team is a diamond in the rough. So I want you guys to reflect on your teams. I want you guys to reflect on the people that you manage. Are you treating them like diamonds in the rough, or are you only treating so much for the star players that you have? And what we know is that star players are the easiest and the most convenient to pirate at the end of the day. In the 2012 London Olympic Games, my favorite marketing case study was the battle between the hashtags of Adidas and Nike. Every time an Olympian won a gold medal, Adidas used the hashtag take the stage. Nike took a different route. So every time, let's say, congratulations Serena Williams for winning the gold medal, hashtag find greatness. In this marketing study, they tried to identify which company had the most number of retweets from all the viewers. And who thinks it's Adidas? It's okay, Jesus loves you if you answer Adidas. Okay, how about Nike? Who says it's Nike? All right, and I think my answer is the same as yours. It resounded more to people because they thought that Nike's slogan was for everyone else to relate with. It's not just about the athlete, it's about the greatness of each one of us inside. That every victory of an athlete tells us the story that everyone can start from being a zero to becoming a hero. Leaders are like this. When your team, and I know you guys are in very, very, very tense and stressful environments, when the ship is sinking, it is the utmost responsibility of the team captain, of the leader, to inspire his people and tell them that things will still go right. Lesson number 4, second to the last I'd like to share. It's not about working hard, but smart as well. My pet peeve, again, in the corporate world, and I'm sure by now you've noticed I have lots of pet peeves, are people who go to the office at 7 in the morning and go home at 11 p.m., clocking 14 hours of work per day, believing that they should be the best employee of the year. I hate these kinds of people. Because if you can work for 14 hours, but I can prove to you that the same job can be accomplished in 4 hours, you're working hard and I'm working smart. Working smart means employing technology to make things efficient. Working smart means knowing how to delegate tasks based on people's strengths. Working smart means knowing how to say no if it's not really important. Those telecons, those meetings, those engagements that you think are important, but you have to say no because something else is wildly important to be accomplished. That's working smart. And at the end of the day, I will always promote the person who works smart because that means she has more time to travel the world and be inspired and be more creative. She has more time for her family. She gets more sleep. And by the time she goes back to work, she's even more energized and motivated to contribute back for the company. I love people who work smart. And so I'm going to share with you another anecdotes of what I learned in the Apprentice Asia. Here's me and the other handsome guys, my friends from the Apprentice Asia. This is how we look in the morning when we just wake up. And I realized that the biggest problem in joining any reality TV show, whether it's Survivor, Big Brother or whatever, is that the producers are going to require you to do your own household chores. You cook your own food, you do your own laundry, you do your own ironing, and because they use that to induce tension and stress to all the contestants. In our case, and this is a classic, and don't tell that I told this to you, they only give you one iron and one ironing board. You're only allowed to bring 2 suits, sets of suits, and 2 clothes as well, so that you're going to be struggling to do those household chores on top of the tasks given to you by the CEO. And so I realized after having seen all the Apprentice episodes of other countries that this shouldn't be my biggest problem. I have to devote my energy on the bigger issues, such as the tasks, the interviews, the boardroom sessions. And so I had to work smart. And what did I do? I brought my magic weapon with me. And that is this. You guys know what this is? It's a steam iron. I love steam iron. It's always what I give as a gift to business travelers because there are a lot of hotels that charge you for ironing. And at the same time, you might not even have enough time to do it. And so I'm going to give another tip. In TV shows, there will always be moments wherein the lights and the cameras aren't working. So the producers will ask you to sit down and do nothing, and you're not allowed to talk to anyone. In those moments of boredom or of nothing else to do, I would always bring my clothes with me every day and bring my steam iron and make sure that all my clothes are done. It was a very cinematic scene the next morning. I was the only contestant who wasn't panicking to do my own laundry or my own ironing. I was sipping my hot mug of coffee in the kitchen countertop, enjoying my own piece of zen, and trying to strategize how to kick out Andrea or Alex in the competition. I was working smart and not hard. Imagine there are some contestants who even hide the iron under their bed so that they're going to be the first one to use the iron when they wake up in the morning. I'm going to give another example. This is me and the other beautiful ladies of The Apprentice Asia. And another example I'd like to give is that by the 8th episode, my biggest realization was that the winner of this TV show or any Apprentice TV show is not the person who's the most intelligent or the smartest. If you've been doing and shooting this TV show for 3 months straight, waking up at 6 in the morning for call time, sleeping at 12 a.m. or 1 a.m., practically 4 hours of sleep averagely every day, the winner is the person who rather has the most amount of sleep, the most amount of stamina, the one who had the most nutritious breakfast to get him through the day. By the 8th episode, everyone was exhausted to the point that they just wanted to go home. But I wanted to win. And I knew that I needed artificial energy for this. So what did I do? I brought another magic weapon. And that is this. I'm not sure if you know this, guys, but this is Extra Joss. It's an Indonesian brand that's also popular in the Philippines. And it's like a powdered form of Red Bull or Lipovitan. So by the 8th episode, every time the producer would say, all right, contestants, please prepare in the next 2 hours. We're going to be starting the tasks. I would get a mineral water bottle, hide myself in the cubicle in the washroom, secretly put my Extra Joss because I don't want to share with the other contestants. And in the next 2 hours, I was the only contestant who was like high on caffeine and B6 and B12. And I can really attest to this. I think I won, not because I was the smartest guy, but I had the extra artificial energy to carry me in episodes 9 to 12. This is working smart and not hard. Obviously, I'm not here to share that the secret to success is Extra Joss. All right? I'm here to share that all of us are rather falling into the trap that when we're given a task or a project, we jump onto it, getting so excited that we fail to miss the forest for the trees. We don't execute. Smart people who work smart before they even engage a task ask questions such as, why am I doing this? Should I be doing this? Is this the only way of doing this? Or maybe someone else has done it already that I don't need to do it in the first place. In the movie Hunger Games, if you may be familiar about this, one of my favorite lines in the second installment is catching fire. And in that last episode, and I'm going to ask a question for those who have seen this movie, do you remember what Katniss, so when Katniss was about to shoot an arrow to Finnick, what did Finnick say to Katniss? I think I heard it. All right, remember who the real enemy is. So for those who may not be familiar about this TV show, The Hunger Games is just an American adaptation of the Japanese novel Battle Royale, wherein the world has crumbled into 12 districts, and every year they get one person to fight in an arena, and they have to kill each other. because that's their way of showing that the government is the strongest and the most powerful. So Katniss in that year was summoned to play in the Hunger Games. She was the winner and killed other 11 people. The next year, something happened, long story, but to make it short, she was summoned again to compete in the Hunger Games. And so one of the contestants was telling her, you don't need to keep on killing people. You don't need to participate in the Hunger Games every year. Why? Because what we need to do is to kill the capital. Because no more capital means no more Hunger Games. This is working smart and not hard. And so I ask you guys to reflect on your careers, on your jobs, on your projects. Are you that person who takes pride of working and clocking in a lot of hours? Or are you that person smart enough to clock in less without compromising output? Peter Drucker says it best, and I love this quote, and he says, there is nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all. I don't care if you've created the most animated PowerPoint presentation for a client. If that's not what the client was looking for because you failed to research about him, everything becomes irrelevant. I don't care if you are driving the most fuel-efficient car to get to a certain destination. If you're supposed to be in another road to avoid the traffic, everything becomes irrelevant as well. And so I ask you guys, please, don't miss the forest for the trees. It's all about working smart because everyone has 24 hours of their time. No one here has more than 24 hours, except maybe Hermione Granger or whoever, right? But everyone is, and that's the beauty of it because it makes everyone in this room equal. But the winner who takes it all is someone who can do more for the same amount of time given for everyone else. Lastly, as I end, and this is where I end it all with the value of grit, I'd like to think that the secret to success is out there. And that's what we call as the value of grit. Not the grit that you find on cheeseburgers, but grit as a psychological, non-intellectual trait that if you want something so bad, you're going to get committing to it, not for weeks, not for months, but years, and working hard to get that objective a reality, no matter how many times you fall down. So before I preempt myself on the value of grit, let's backtrack and ask you guys, apart from grit, what do you think makes people successful in life? Let's start with school. How are we measured in school? Right? In terms of grades, right? IQ. My mom used to tell me if you get the highest grades in school, you're going to be the richest man on earth. Not true, obviously. But having a level of intelligence is good. So there's IQ. In leadership and influence, what else do we have? There's EQ, right? If you're emotionally intelligent enough to understand what you're feeling and be able to control it. I'd like to believe in the corporate world, as you go up in the ladders, it's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's rather hiring people smarter than you and managing and trafficking different egos and personalities. Because remember, the smarter the person is, the more prima donna sometimes his behavior is as well. So there's IQ, there could also be EQ. What else? NQ. Okay, we can talk about all the Qs in this session. What else? All right. What else? Tenacity, that's right. Come on, give me credit for this, guys. Why do you think I won the Apprentice Asia? Perseverance? What else? Good looks, thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna give some anecdotes again about this. In corporate America, they try to identify what makes people successful in terms of being appointed as CEOs. They had lots of hypotheses about this. Harvard Business Review even made research. And their first theory was IQ. Maybe the more intelligent you are, you get appointed to become a leader of a company. But what we realize is that some CEOs have really bad IQ and some have good ones. Barack Obama, which we may think as one of the most effective leaders of his generation, actually has one of the lowest IQs, second to George Bush. But he does well because he has charisma and he knows how to communicate. And so they realized that one thing common among American CEOs is rather height. And the average height of an American CEO is 6'2". That's because scientifically speaking, we always allude that someone who's taller than us has more dominance, is more commanding, and to a certain extent, even more good-looking. All right? In the Philippines, when we ask girls, and if the girl's boyfriend is not good-looking, she has two answers. Is your boyfriend good-looking? And the typical Filipino girl would say, he's nice, or he's tall. All right? So maybe good looks can propel you towards success. Another example, in 1988, my alma mater, the University of the Philippines, had a thesis by a student who won an international award predicting which students will be accepted in multinational companies based on their resumes. Group A had students who had really good-looking photos in their resumes. Group B had students whose photos are, how do I say this, are aesthetically challenged in life. All right? Who do you think of these two groups had a higher chance of getting hired? Who says it's A? All right. Who says it's B? It's okay, doesn't mean you're not good looking. All right, so the answer is B. I'm kidding, it's A. All right, so it's really A. So perhaps good looks can propel you towards success. But here's the magic, guys, and here's where I end. Dr. Angela Duckworth, which if you're a TED Talk fan, you may have heard this theory. In 2013, she created a landmark study predicting what makes people successful in life. And in that study, she tried to allude it to different contexts. Her theories was it IQ? Was it EQ? Beauty or good looks? Physical fitness? Or probably even wealthy parents who can send you to expensive schools. She tried to experiment this in a lot of contexts. She went to the National Spelling Bee predicting which students will advance to the semifinal round. She went to New York public schools predicting which teachers will continue their jobs despite the really bad pay. She went to the West Point Military Academy predicting which cadets will stay longer despite the really life-threatening training. In all of those concepts, in all those variables, either they were not related or they were even inversely related to success. But one thing stood out, and that was the value of grit. And grit, according to Dr. Angela Duckworth, is passion and perseverance combined for a long-term goal. Grit is like living that it's a marathon, not as a sprint. And that if no matter how many times you fall down, you're gonna get up and say, I'm gonna get this done because I deserve to get this prize. I'm sharing the concept of grit, guys, because if you look at all the contestants, it was a Cinderella story of grit for myself. Remember, I was the youngest contestant who had the least to offer on the table. Majority of my competitors knew Mr. Tony Fernandez and were already CEOs or business owners of their own rights. I was the just guy from humble beginnings in Manila wanting to prove that I can make it big as well. And I think I won not because I was the smartest and not just because I was the most prepared, but I think because I was the guy who wanted the prize the most. I was the grittiest. I was that guy who wanted to prove that you can never be too small to dream big, that the Filipino talent is good, and that number 3, I realized this. This was November 15, 2012. And I was watching the TV commercial saying that Apprentice Asia is now open for applications while I was stalking my ex on Facebook. And I told myself, I'm gonna join this TV show because I want that person who broke my heart to finally see me on TV to the tune of Adele singing, "We Could Have Had It All." Right? As I end, here's the problem. John, you tell me about grit, but where can I find it? And unfortunately, you cannot buy grit in the nearest 7-Eleven or convenience store. Neither can you pick it up on the floor. It is rather your duty and responsibility to inspire yourself every day and find out where that grit is coming from. In Asia, we have a Nescafe commercial that says, "For whom or for what do you wake up for every day?" And if you can't answer this question, then you don't have the right to complain about the world because you don't have the right amount of grit. I have this one last theory. I keep on saying last. I'm sorry for that. And there's a theory of growth mindset. Just to give you a tip and to arm you, if I can't find grit, how do I develop grit? And there's this really beautiful theory by Dr. Carol Dweck, which she developed in Stanford University. And it is the concept of growth mindset. Having a growth mindset means that the ability to learn is not fixed. That as long as you keep on putting effort into something, you're better off than someone who did not do anything at all. So for example, in school, if you don't like math and math doesn't love you back, as long as you keep on practicing those math drills, you're statistically going to be better off than someone who did not do anything at all. A person who has a growth mindset believes that even if she has a bad boss, that's good because she's learning to prepare herself for an even worse boss in the future. A person with a fixed mindset rather believes that failure is a permanent condition. That if you're not good at something, you're just as that. There's this beautiful saying that says, the same boiling water that hardens the egg softens the potato. And so I want to ask you guys in 2016, when you look and visualize at your goals, in times of challenges, are you that egg that becomes tougher and hardens, or are you that potato that gives up and easily softens? I hope you're the former. Dr. Carol Dweck exposed kids, just to prove to you scientifically that this theory has been proven. She went to experiment on two sets of kids. Set A saw these photos, set B didn't. And in set A, the kids were told that this is how, do you know what this is? This is not Manila at 7 p.m. with traffic. All right? This is the brain. And this is how the brain grows as long as you keep on putting space and memory into it. And so Dr. Carol Dweck says, as long as you keep on learning, your brains create convolutions of networks with each other. When Albert Einstein died, what they saw after dissecting his brain was a very convoluted brain. And so she says, as long as you keep on learning, even if it's in terms of mistakes, embarrassments, and failures, continue doing that. Because that means you're getting closer towards success. 10 years later, they looked at these kids, and the kids who saw the photos were likely to persevere in times of challenges because they did not believe that failure is a permanent condition. They believed that the earlier they fail and the faster they fail, the more likely they will avoid committing those mistakes in the more critical parts of their lives when they're already adults, when they're business owners, or when they need to make those $1 million assumptions in their businesses. And so I'm going to end with this quote. I'm really going to end now. And now that you've been inspired, and now that you find out the value of grit, I don't want you guys to get intimidated if other people are already ahead of the race. There's this beautiful theory in HR, which is what we call as the threshold theory, which means that no matter how smart you are or your competitor is, as long as you keep on meeting that minimum threshold, everyone is equal, and what sets them apart is execution consistently. And so Zig Ziglar, one of my favorite motivational speakers of all time, says it. Don't get intimidated if people are ahead of you, because you don't have to be great to start. But it all starts in day one. You also have to start in order to be great. Thank you po. Maraming salamat for listening. Again, these are my social media accounts. Please do add me. And I'd just like to promote, my book is called From Grit to Great. It's available in all bookstores in Southeast Asia. And if you're also interested, we have books on sale outside. I'm not asking you to buy it because it's going to make me rich, but because the proceeds of the book go to scholarships. I, as a scholar myself, have been to a lot, and so I feel how it feels to want something but you can't afford it, and they go to 4 NGOs through scholarships. In the Philippines, we're funding the UP School of Economics Alumni Foundation. Thank you.
Fantastic.